This virus was the cause of a pandemic in 1918 and 1919 that resulted in over 500,000 deaths in the United States, as well as 20 million deaths around the world.
The lifestyle of some male homosexuals has triggered an epidemic of a rare form of cancer.
But it quickly developed a reputation.
And the deaths kept coming and coming.
The fear was palpable.
I was terrified of passing on HIV to someone else.
From pandemics to viruses, deadly drugs, and even vaccines, many in our world sadly have become victims of evil inventions. And these are works of those who have been rightly called
inventors of evil things. They keep inventing new ways of wrecking lives. Every so-called pandemic that has taken place in the world was orchestrated.
Yes.
I'm serious.
Yes, sir.
Put me on record. I've done my own research.
Yes, sir.
And let no man fool you.
Yes, sir.
For many years in our world, the nations had been plagued with several pandemics. In the year 2020, the world was hit hard by the news of a virus, one which from the outset was rightly exposed by the man of God, Pastor Chris, for what it truly was.
In the early years of the coronavirus pandemic, the man of God, Reverend Chris Oyakilome, God's prophetic voice in these end times, boldly declared that the coronavirus was not a natural occurrence. He warned the world when many mocked him, much like the prophets of old who were ridiculed for speaking what God revealed to them.
Viruses don't exist in nature. You see the problem? They don't exist in nature. Most people have never known it. They are not living things. Anything that doesn't exist in nature is man-made. Period. That's the fact. That's the truth. Is man-made. Where do viruses come from? They don't exist in nature. If they don't exist in nature, they're created by somebody. It came out of a lab. There were those who said, "Why, Pastor Grace? How can Pastor Grace say that?" I said, "Tell me, where do viruses come from?" But later on, you found out that's exactly what happened. That's what happened. And I said China was a scapegoat. That's what I said. Because they didn't produce it. Somebody else produced it. Took it to China. Released it from China. You say, "Pastor Chris, how do you know?" By revelation. This was planned in the lab. Of course, with their collaborators. Maybe actually, like I said before, it was the Chinese that were collaborators, even though it happened in China. The perpetrators were from the United States.
In the wake of the outbreak of this concocted virus, the world was forced into a pandemic.
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
One which many have now come to understand was planned. While this came as a shock to many, history reveals that that was just a repeat song, sung by the same perpetrators of pandemics in years past.
This is not the first pandemic. This is not the first one. Question, where went the other ones? Let me tell you, this is not new. It's been on for a long time. The thing is, the deception has been on and on and on.
People think COVID happened in 2019, going into the spring of 2020. And they don't understand that COVID is a brand. It's a brand of a terror campaign that has been going on for 120 years. And the terror campaign is to say that in the name of health, no liberty is afforded to anyone, period. That's the war that we're fighting. And we are 121 years into it. And David and Stacy, the sadness I have is that even the most allegedly awakened parts of the community standing against this current tyranny has no literacy on what they're fighting.
Now, they're even so bold to come out to the open, and they think nobody will address the situation. God is addressing it. You see it.
In light of this firm declaration, the covers are being blown open, and the perpetrators of this evil are being exposed under the glare of God's expository light. Remember Dr. Anthony Fauci, He was the acclaimed savior.
But they're really criticizing science because I represent science.
Dr. Fauci. Yeah, I don't just mention people's names. But when I do, you know that I know something that is more than the ordinary. Because I never take a stand against anyone personally, except I know something supernaturally, and that's significant, demanding such either a rebuke or attention. And I told you that he was the brain behind COVID-19.
Oh yes, and in a bid to cover his tracks, he championed the cause of parroting COVID protocols and designed formulas for saving the world from the virus he created.
Things that can be done. It's certainly not the total solution to the problem. Is to delay, if not cancel, anything that's elective. I mean, any medical or surgical procedures that need to be done on an elective basis should not be done in anticipation of the fact that beds and equipment that you would use even in an elective situation should be used for people who really need it. And mitigation means to be prepared to do things that would slow down the spread if we had an influx of infections, such as closing schools, social distancing, teleworking, and things like that.
The man who was helping the world to prescribe what to do about COVID-19 and how to, he was calling it, to flatten the curve, was himself. Listen, what they have not yet discovered, he's the creator of the coronavirus. I'm saying he created it. He is actually behind it. That is the part they have not yet said. It's not a mistake. It was deliberate. He funded it, he planned it, and stood there beside the president trying to help the world, and became a celebrity. But he was the guy behind it. It was always his trick. It was his work. He did it. He's the brain behind it.
When the man of God, Pastor Chris, made this bold assertion in the early days of the COVID pandemic, many doubted the veracity of his claims. But days have rolled into weeks and weeks into years, and the evidences arraigned against Dr. Anthony Fauci prove that the man of God was right the whole time.
Anthony Fauci was and still is the guy to question about the COVID-19 virus. Outgoing Director of the National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, recently released a devastating trove of internal communications and documents that confirm what millions of Americans have suspected for years. Dr. Anthony Fauci directed millions of your hard-earned taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses. Think about that. At the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the very lab at the center of the COVID-19 outbreak debate. And according to these recordings, Fauci lied to Congress about it. This is not speculation. This is not misinformation. These are the receipts, the emails, funding approvals, project descriptions, and back channel discussions, showing how U.S. money flowed through intermediaries straight into experiments that enhanced the transmissibility and pathogenicity of the coronaviruses. The kind of research that carries catastrophic risk if something goes wrong. And something was deliberately made to go wrong, and that was in late 2019.
Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. Today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents that expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives.
Gabbard points to whistleblower allegations that intelligence analysts who supported the lab leak theory, well, they face professional consequences and retaliation. The documents also focus on U.S. taxpayer-funded COVID research tied to China. According to the records, EcoHealth Alliance received funding from the National Institutes of Health for a project called, quote, Understanding the Risk of Bat Coronavirus Emergence. The documents identified the Wuhan lab as a research partner and show at least $66,500 in U.S. grant money was spent in China. Now, one of the most explosive claims made is that Fauci allegedly lied under oath during his 2024 congressional testimony, where he denied knowledge of discussions with U.S. intelligence officials about that COVID-related research.
Dr. Fauci's close relationships with the intelligence community enabled him to assume three key roles that shield him from scrutiny. First, Dr. Fauci funded dangerous gain-of-function coronavirus research linked to Big Pharma and their pursuit of universal vaccines worth trillions of dollars. Second, Dr. Fauci was the behind-the-scenes advisor who, alongside his hand-picked so-called experts, pushed the intelligence community to endorse a natural animal origin to hide his dangerous gain-of-function research that he funded using taxpayer dollars, all of this in a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth and shift the blame and attention away from Fauci's own actions. Third, Dr. Fauci became the nation's pandemic pundit, and he publicly pushed lies, disinformation, and censorship using every platform available. The tactics that were used to hide the truth are straight from the deep state playbook.
So I was right all the time. He's the brain behind it. And of course, with several collaborators and enablers.
So Anthony Fauci,
My name is Dr. Tony Fauci. I'm the director of
the man who is heading the pandemic task force, was involved in a cover-up.
He directed the cover-up. And in fact, everybody else was paid off, and paid off big time. Millions of dollars in funding from Tony Fauci's organization, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. These investigators that committed the fraud continue to this day to be paid big time by the NIAID.
He funded it and lied about it.
The NIH and NIAID categorically has not funded gain-of-function research to be conducted in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We have not funded gain-of-function research on this virus in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I don't know how many times I can say it, Madam Chair. We did not fund gain-of-function research to be conducted in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
It's a lie. So the lies upon lies upon lies upon lies.
While the world is awakened to the shocking realization of this heap of lies told by Dr. Anthony Fauci, did you know that long before COVID, he had spun this same exact tricks on an unsuspecting world during a previous pandemic in history? Yes, during the orchestrated HIV/AIDS pandemic.
What they haven't asked him yet is what happened with HIV. No one is saying anything about that yet. I wish the countries that lost so many lives to HIV would wake up and recognize the hand of this same fellow in HIV.
We know from this study quite clearly that there will be a delay in progression significantly greater than for individuals who do not take the drug.
What he's saying is absolute propaganda, and the same kind of propaganda that he's perpetrated to kill millions since 1984.
He was appointed Director of National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in 1984.
I believe now that we have the agent in hand, that the amount of effort and energy that's being put into it by biomedical sciences that within a reasonable period of time we'll have a lot of these answers.
Fauci is no stranger to leading the federal response to public health crisis. In the 1980s, his career heavily focused on the HIV/AIDS crisis.
It started really when I was 25 years old. I was part of the team that isolated HIV from the saliva and blood of the patients from France, where Luc Montagnier had originally isolated the virus.
Je pense qu'il y a toute une recherche à faire à ce niveau-là qui est négligée parce que
This was a confirmatory study, but Tony Fauci and Robert Gallo were working together then to spin the story in a different way. At that time, Dr. Rossetti was out of town, and Tony Fauci says, we understand that you have a paper in press, and we want a copy of it. And I said, yes, there's a paper in press, and it's confidential, and no, I will not give you a copy of it. He started screaming at me. Then he said, give us the paper right now, or you'll be fired for insubordination. And I just said, I'm sure when Dr. Rossetti gets back, you can have the conversation. And so Frank comes back, several weeks later, and is really bullied into giving Fauci the paper. Fauci holds up the publication of the paper for several months, while Robert Gallo writes his own paper and takes all the credit. And of course, patents are involved. This delay of the confirmation, literally led to spreading the virus around, killing millions.
Perhaps no one expressed the anguish of AIDS better than New York writer Larry Kramer. But he was even more angry at the federal government and the pharmaceutical industry. One person who felt Kramer's fury was NIH Dr. Anthony Fauci.
It's still been crushing to me to think that I didn't know my work in 1999 was something that had been avoided. From 83 and 82, when the virus was isolated, the virus didn't have to wait until 84 to be confirmed. Think of how many people, the entire continent of Africa, lost a generation as that virus was spread through because of the arrogance of a group of people, and it includes Robert Redfield, who's now the head of the CDC. Right along with Tony Fauci. They were working together to take credit and make money, and they had the patents on it and tailored them to IL-2 therapy, which was absolutely the wrong therapy. And had that not happened, millions wouldn't have died from HIV.
He should be asked questions about HIV. What does he know about HIV? And if he says he doesn't know anything about HIV, he doesn't know the origin of HIV and why HIV became what it was and why it killed so many people unabated, I will say something more.
Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. Ephesians 5, verse 11.